Maddie and Steve, they set the stage. From classic bouts to the modern age. Every slam, every story, every legacy comes alive with wrestling pedigree. So tune on in, the spotlight's bright. The ring is ready on this podcast night. It's wrestling pedigree.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Wrestling Pedigree. I'm your host, Matty. Along with me, we have the usual co-host, the last real general manager of MWL, Steve Hawkins. How are you, sir?
I'm fantastic, Matty. How are you?
I'm good. It's been a long week, but it's been an emotional week in professional wrestling, but let's start a brand new week tonight. But tonight we have our special guest back for our part 2 interview, and that is Sonny the Mad Eagle Cain. How are you, sir? The legendary, the legend, the absolute legend, because his fucking stories are amazing.
Thank you very much, sir. First of all, I plead innocent of both charges, whatever they may
be. Sonny is also a co-host of the Wrestling Spotlight, and you can also see him on retakes. And honest, if you are ever needing some great stories from the 90s and 2000s and anything in between, Sonny is your guy. And I love hearing them in part 1. And I cannot wait for part 2. So let's start off where we ended. I think we're in 1997, North Carolina on the Independent.
Mm-hmm.
Where did you go off after 97 when you did with the Hardys, when you first met them? Were you just staying in North Carolina?
Yes. So I first met the Hardys in Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling, headed up by a young promoter who's made a name for himself named Joe Willer in Wilmington, North Carolina. He's still running the Mid-Atlantic. He's an announcer down there, so on and so forth, and owner of the Mid-Atlantic, I guess, again at this point in time. But I first ran into the Hardys in person there, as they had developed a little bit of some negativity at trying to get together and things like that and make all their dates. But to their defense, they drove the smallest car I think I'd ever seen at that time. It was a Pinto or something that they were out riding around in. And it didn't look all that dependable, but they showed up every day that they were scheduled to be booked. And they just kept going after it. I was at the first tables and ladders and chairs match here in North Carolina, and the way that came about was, so I would always go out to the ring and assist Jeff Hardy, whether I was invited into the ring by Jeff or not. They would just beat the living fool out of him at the end of the matches, for whatever reason, and this went on for a number of months in a row. And one night I was there, I was where they were, and I asked Matt, I said, "Aren't you going to do anything to help him?" And he said, "I am." He said, "Grab this chair and help me take this table." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "We're going to go grab a ladder." And he pulled me to the side as nice as he knew how. He said, I know you like to help out, but for this one, would you mind sitting out and let Jeff and I do it? We're going to do something new tonight." I didn't know this at the time because it kind of hurt my feelings that I'd been so much a part of the three of them that I was being asked to be set out on obviously something that was big, a big event that was about to go down. But my mom had Matt Hardy's number, and they talked on a regular basis back and forth. And she had asked Matt to look out for me uh, in the ring and not to let my over enthusiasm, as she put it, get me into something I didn't need to be in. And I didn't know that they were yakking like that. I knew they knew each other, but I thought she had pulled back and she had not. So I think the reason he did that on the first tables, ladders, and chairs match was because he wasn't entirely certain how the thing was going to play out fully, and the connection he had to my mom. Mom was very outgoing. She was what I would call proudly a free spirit. She listened to nobody. She had to have uh, there are A-type men in this world. I'd like to think I'm one of them. And then the more A-type you were, the more drawn Mama was to you. She just liked being around people that could seemingly get it done and get it done in a timely way. And didn't make her a bad person. That was just her pick of the fellas. And so Jeff and I ran from 94 to 97, 98 ish maybe. And after I won the title, the Triangle Wrestling Federation title, I took a step back and I had marital issues. I had actually gone down to the Mid Atlantic to wrestle in a match, and there is a chain mark that you may can see. I don't know if you can see it well under the light on my forehead. I purposely grow bangs to try and keep a little bit covered. But a man popped me in the head with a chain who was having marital problems at the show. I had not invited him into the match, but he suddenly just appeared. And at that time, the Mid Atlantic was being led by a friend of mine who I had met on the Independence, and it wasn't Joe. But when this man did this and lost his temper on me, I thought, well, the same thing can happen to me until I get the marriage issue straight. I'll just take a year or so off, and I'll come back and I'll continue forward. Well, during that year, I was Triangle Wrestling Federation heavyweight title champion and held the belt, and the league closed down, and I was the champion that until the league closed. I have the belt here if y'all would like to see it.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, please.
Hold on. I wasn't thinking about this earlier. I was running like a chicken.
We'll actually go to your world title.
Trying to get ready for the shoot. I take these things very, very seriously in terms of presentation and the whole gamut. Anyway, this is the original title. This was I don't know if you can see it. Can y'all see this?
1 second. If I do this way,
Give
lift up a bit more. Lift up a bit more. There we go.
That's the original belt. What I was told was that was a fill-in belt for another belt that had been red and gold, and that was being held up legally at that point in time. So they had switched over to that title, and the young man didn't pay me for my run as champion or being the main eventer. And I was talking to Chief Wahoo McDaniels at that time heavily still, being, I guess you could say, mentored by Wahoo and this and that and how to handle promoters. Wahoo had told me what a bad deal was that the WWF was offering. I mean, I was being mentored to the point that I could have gone that night, picked up the phone and said, Chief, do you believe any of this? Wahoo was a real Indian chief and of two tribes, and that just added to his lore as to who he really was in real life. And anyway, long story short, Wahoo said, keep the belt when you leave the league. Make him an offer. Add up the matches you've worked on paper, whatever they are. put $250 down and tell him that's your pay, and when you get it, you'll give him the belt back. Well, he never paid me, so I've still got his belt. He said he'll never forget you when you take his title from him. I said, wonderful. I said, well, we'll call it even. I said, I guess that's breaking even in the game. And he said, in this case, it was. And Chief and I talked until 2 or 3 weeks before he passed, because he was in Charlotte, North Carolina at that time, and he was going back home to Texas and to have some surgery, and he died prematurely. It was an all of a sudden death type situation. And I was to have gotten his phone number once he was all settled in Texas. He thought that much of me, and he wanted to put me into his Indian tribe, which a chief, I'm told, a legitimate chief can't do. I've got some Indian in me, and that's what I ran as. And during the time I'm doing this, Vince McMahon comes to town, Matt and Steve, and buys up everything.
Yeah. Yeah, we saw
Rings, promoters' licenses, you name it. If it had something to do with wrestling on it, it was Vince's. And it just shut everything down. It was a dark era in professional wrestling. And unless I wanted to go to other states, Tennessee and Virginia and those type states, to have a chance to still make $25 to $150 a fight, you weren't going to make it. And I'm told the reason they do that is to force people out of the business, and that may or may not be the case, but it certainly puts a hardship on the guy that's got this grand idea of how they want to be seen as while wrestling. I'm told some other people told the WWF no, but I doubt it's very many. Dusty Rhodes didn't. He went out wearing polka dots. I mean, he made it work, but he shouldn't have had to. They should have let him go out as the way he was in NWA and WCW. They should have given him more prestige than that, in my professional opinion. It was a dark day for him when he went out wearing polka dots, and I was just not going to go out wearing all green and have no chance at building my brand, which is what I'm now getting around to at 56, and trying to make a name for myself still. Dad asked me what my end game was, and I said to be known. I said to make money and to be known for doing what I'm doing. I said that's the goal. I said, and I'd been saying I wanted to be known nationally, and I ended up on a show from England, and that clearly takes me beyond national. Mm-hmm. So I'm very blessed to be in the position I am. Now, I continued on after that in wrestling. I did go back around 2000 and worked as a ring referee for a couple, 3 years before getting out altogether. And that's what that picture is up there of Dan Severin. And I walked out and I knew who Dan was. And honest God, the reporter just put a camera in my face and said, "Smile, it's Dan Severin." Well, I didn't expect to be elbow to elbow with him that quick. I mean, I expected to, walk out and look around and that kind of thing, but that's how they do sometimes. I only turned down one picture the entire time I was in the business, and that was the Honky Tonk Man. We had a talk one night. I was showing Goldsboro, North Carolina, at Gold's Gym, and I got to spend about 30 minutes with him the same night that picture was taken. And he just did not make a good impression on me. And whether Elvis Presley's image was totally made up or not, had there not been an Elvis, to quote Ric Flair, there never would have been a Honky Tonk Man. I mean, come on. Mm-hmm. Anybody can see that. So I don't think, as nice as the Honky Tonk Man is now, I don't think he could have thought all that up on his own.
How did he rub you up the wrong way?
He it was interesting because I said I made one comment that I later found out had been the case. I said by reading Priscilla Presley's book, I said and it's in her book about her and Elvis. It's called Elvis and Me. It's a terrific read. But it said I asked him. I said, "Do you think that they were a true couple before they were married?" And he looked at me and he said he doubted it. And I said, "Well, I find that hard to believe that he would just bring her to the States and nothing go on until actual marriage." And if you read her book, it goes into a little bit of detail about, yes, they were a couple, and part of the reason that I think they got married when they did was because I think she was pregnant at the time with Lisa. And I don't think he wanted he wanted the child to be raised in an unmarried environment, at least in the beginning of that whole deal. But Mom was around Elvis for a couple of years and off and on and throughout a little bit. And the man I met was very laid back. He wore everyday clothing, joked all the time, just a real magician when it came to joking. He could not make a sentence not tell a joke. I mean, that's how. I don't know if y'all have ever heard that about him or not, but that's how into him he was. He just liked having people laid back around him. He didn't like uptight people at all. And as far as seeing the Colonel, I saw when I saw them together during the last two years or so, they got on. I mean, people are going to argue that no matter how good they are, but they're going to argue and they're going to have disagreements, and I'm sure he and the Colonel did, but it was nothing like the paper said. The papers have a way of blowing things out of proportion, and even today with Priscilla and her situation with Graceland, there's more going on there, I think, than we'll hear about, but she shouldn't be having to live through that over and over again. That's a little bit of abuse, I think, by Graceland on to her, and I just think it needs to be stopped by somebody somewhere.
So we're in just near 2001. Vince has bought WCW.
Yes, sir. Sorry,
oh yeah. And then there's nothing in town because he's bought up all the promotions, all the territories. What do you do in 2001 and 2002?
2001, 2000.
As an independent wrestler, how do you
2001, 2002, 2003, I basically refereed and made trying to think of a good way to describe it. Made star-like appearances as a referee. In other words, they gave me top billing like you all are doing now, then as a ring ref, and they would say special guest wrestler Sonny the Man Eagle Cain is our referee tonight, and the main event or semi-main event or whatever the thing turned out to be. And that's how I worked. So I worked about 6-7 shows as a ring ref. I enjoyed that as much as I enjoyed wrestling, because here's the mind-blowing thing that people don't really get about me as a person. I never really wanted to wrestle as much as I did. When I got to Ivan's school, he said the only slot available was to become a pro wrestler. And guys, I was already there, so what's the boy to do? I mean, I wasn't going back at that point. So I took the training and continued to have the connections and just reveled in it. Steamboat mentored me and trained me on the road after Ivan and helped me get through Ivan's a month earlier than I was scheduled to. I was actually scheduled for 4 months, and I did it in 3. And at that point, I think some of the reason I got through it in 3 was because my attendance record was real good. I only missed a week of practice from a neck injury that I did not realize how serious it was at the time. I thought take some aspirin or whatever and miss about a week and go back. And true story, Ivan sent the wrestling fella at the school, Sean Powers, after me. Sean and I were about the same age, and Sean knew how to get me. I didn't have everyone wasn't phone connected back then the way we are now. This is a new thing, sort of. And he said, Sean asked if I was going back. I said, I sure am. I said, I'm just trying to heal. And in the back of my head, I really thought, well, this is a little like the Ric Flair story because they're coming after me the way they had gone after Flair when he tried to quit. I wasn't trying to quit. I was trying to heal. And that's why I went back to tell that. And I'm the type guy, if I study something intently for an hour or 2 hours or whatever the case may be, if I get it, Matt and Steve, I get bored with it. I have it. I don't have to go through the stuff. I had done the karate before I got to Ivan's school, so I knew what he was trying to explain, I thought. And I'd get bored in practice sometimes, just sitting there going over the same thing over and over again. We would drill during our practice, we would drill for an hour of hitting the ropes for 30 minutes, taking the bumps for a half hour, getting up, taking arm drags, taking drop kicks, then going straight into moves. All of the hand-to-hand moves, the arm bars, the reverse arm bars, the headlocks, the snapmare takeovers. I mean, this is how we would warm up, and then we would still have an hour and a half of practice left to go of anything new that Ivan thought he wanted to teach us that night. That was our warm-up. He said we didn't need to run. We would be doing our running in the ring, and he meant it. I mean, we would take clotheslines as part of the deal, and the whole shooting match was to get us to learn how to take the bumps. And to be perfectly honest, I paid even better attention after I got hurt taking the bump. And in my case, what made me have cold feet about Japan and about going to WWF was the fact I had been hurt in training camp, and I didn't want to get re-injured again at the hands of people I didn't know. And at least on the independence, I had established by that time, by 94, a little bit of rapport with fellas that I felt somewhat comfortable with. And I honestly think another reason Steamboat got me through it the way he did was because his wife and I had a romance during my training. And he did. Steamboat failed to tell me, true stories. Steamboat failed to tell me that they were having marital issues when I got there. A little heads up would have been nice. So I put that in Steamer's lap. He didn't fill me in all the way, and Mom caught wind of it. And being the helicopter mom that she was, she said, "Well, you're gonna have to get." Talking to Steamboat, she said, "Well, you're gonna have to come to Mount Olive so we can talk about this in private." She said, "Let me explain something to you. You're not gonna hurt him for your best." And anyway, it was funny. He ended up meeting my cousin. My cousin's a 7th degree black belt, and at that time he was on at the sheriff's office too. And I'm certain that leveled the playing field between Steamer and I a little bit, because he knew I knew somebody that would show up. And the sad thing was, at the end of it all, guys, Bonnie and I already liked each other at the tail end of everything. And she just wasn't ready to leave Steamer at the time. She eventually left him, and she's a book author today. She's written a couple of books, and she seems to be doing well in Charlotte still, and I'm glad it's worked out for the both of them. Steamboat's remarried at this point in time, and if I were to see him today, he'd be just as nice and laid back to me as he is in that picture behind me. I mean, the last time I saw him in 94, 95,
Wow.
he was that way. He was just laid back. This was after everything, and he'd walk over, shake my hand. I apologized to him back then. I said, I said it was my first time on my own. I said I was in a man's sport. I said, and there she was. And I said, I should have thought better about it at the time. But he never would confess to me that that was why he gave me the lousy WWF offer. And I asked him about that. I manned up and asked him about that. I said, did that have anything to do with the horrible offer I got from him? He went, he did. He wasn't afraid of that. But I'm that way. I'll speak it. And before I decided to share this, I thought, well, what if he contacts me and says, well, what if he does? I mean, what's he going to do at this point in the game? Just say it didn't happen? All he's got to do is ask Bonnie. And she started it with me. She actually came to my apartment one day, and I stepped my head out the door. True stories I've ever told anybody. She said, what are you doing? I said, where's your husband? She said, I'm here to see you. I said, oh. And Bonnie had been one of Ric Flair's girls for a couple of years. So that's how her and Steamboat met, was through Ric Flair.
Wow.
And all this while, Mama still had her contact to Ric Flair. She said, they one hand on him, I'll have Flair here in a minute. And he just sat there. Mama was expression of this when she said it. And she ended up calling him when Flair came. And that was the whole decisive deal there. He had met my cousin, and there Flair stood. So that iced everything. But you never know who knows who in a business like that. So
Exactly.
I hope I'm not judged.
Now, Sonny, being around such legends like Ricky Steamboat, Ric Flair, Ivan Koloff, what's the best piece of advice that they ever gave you about the wrestling business?
Not to do it. Not to do it. I heard not to do it from Flair over dinner one night with my mom and I. I heard not to do it from Steamboat after I first met him, when I first got to his gym and he realized who I was. And not to do it was the biggest single most piece of advice. But I didn't want to be this age and say I wished I had done, or what would have happened if I had done.
Right.
So the fulfilled feeling of contentment is way beyond anything I could describe in words. It's just, I told a friend of mine the other night who I was talking to, I did get this stuff on the wall in one night. This was night after night after night after night after night. I mean, a couple pics were taken the same night, but by and large, it was a lot of different nights and a lot of not time. It just wasn't given. And I think what shocks most people in town now is that I'm still in the business and I appear to be doing so well at it that I think they are surprised at my longevityness. I think they're surprised at my determination still. I've had two people the last week, true story, Matt and Steve, say to me, I've watched a couple of your videos and I'm going to watch a couple more. I had one guy who looked down on me for whatever reason. I won't say his name, but he's had done a complete about face about me. He said, Keep sending me your videos. I'm enjoying them. And he actually told me after Mom died, he said how wrong he was about me. I said, well, it's gotten across town that for some reason or another, it's a real small town of 4,000 people. And I said, it's gotten across town that I live with Mom. Well, that wasn't the case. I said, Mom lived with me. And Mom told people that before she died. She said, I've lived with him 8 years. That this is his house. But none of that should matter. But that's how judgmental people are. They look at you. They think they know you. How do they know you if they're not spending an hour a week with you, sitting down talking to you? They don't know.
Exactly.
Like they
Exactly.
think they do.
As you said, you were a ref during your time.
Yes, sir.
What makes a best referee? Like, oh, what's the best advice if you want to be a ref? Don't do it.
Go do it, but be willing to listen to what they teach you and how they teach you. Independent refereeing is way different than mainstream refereeing. Mainstream refereeing, you almost have to go to WWE's training camp because you have to get in tune with everybody there beforehand, and that's where I would recommend to someone to go would be to the WWE training camp in Florida and learn how to be a ref there. Because in Unreal, WWE's Unreal, they say the refs in on it, the wrestlers are in on it, this, that, the other. Well, that's a different format, kind of, than from the independents. Even though we're there, it's not, I'm going to tell you the next move and the next move and the next move. No, no. You do the whole thing, the whole presentation, and then at the end, you look for the last 2 or 3 moves, and that's when you know that that's it. And the guy may say, that's it, count to 3, or something like that. But ordinarily, the ref will be in the initial conversation in the locker room, but there won't be any of this wearing the wire and all this kind of stuff and tell the wrestlers to do this move or that move. No, the wrestler on the independent, the senior wrestler calls the match all the way through the match, usually. And that's determined by how many years someone has been in the match, has been in the business of wrestling. Like if I were to show up, Matt, and you showed up, Steve, and we were in a 3-way, the first thing I'd say is, Matt, how long you been doing this? Steve, how long you been doing this? I've been doing this 2 years. I've been doing this 6. How long you been doing this, Sonny? 33. I'd win. I'd be the one that would lead the match. I'd say, well, this is what we're doing tonight. So there's a lot of respect in the business that the general fan doesn't see in quotes. And had a friend at the gym kind of get into a little bit of a wordy conversation with me. He said, well, sometimes you see him out on the town, this, that, that. I said, you do. I said, not everything is black and white. I said, they are your coworkers. Oh. I said, so it's not always a scuffle. Now the word in the case of Drew McIntyre and Cody Rhodes, apparently it can be still.
Oh yes.
And anyway, that's a whole nother story. I hope Drew McIntyre gets his, but I guess we'll see. I think they've done Drew dirty.
With is there any fan interactions that you've had over the years that stick with you?
Oh,
Like
sure.
a moment with fans, like whether you're out in a bar or in the arena. Has there ever been a fan interaction that sticks with you today?
Yes, there are a couple actually. So my wife and I were at a show in the Mid Atlantic, and I was champion then, and I defended the title in the ring, and this girl, barely of age, came down, and she had her grandmother with her, and she said, "I want you to autograph my chest." And she had this nice chest, fellas. I mean, it was all right. And my wife got mad. I mean, she got as red as the Briscoe letters and Steve's shirt. And I said, "Hold on now, honey." I said, "She doesn't know how the business works." I said, "Just be cool. I'll explain this to you on the way home." And she said, I needed to, or something like that. And I said, "Honey, what's your name?" And she told me her name. I said, "This is what we're going to do." I said, "Because of your age, I'll sign your arm, and you do whatever you want to with it." Now, what she told me after that was, she said she was going to go home and have it tattooed on her, my name. She liked my name that much. I said, "If you do and you show it to me later, that'll be great. We'll have a picture made. I'll make sure you get it." And her grandmother was so taken by the way I handled that that she shook my hand, thanked me, and paid me like $20 at the end of it for having helped her out. I said, "Well, she got a little excited." I said, "It happens." Another fan interaction is today I have this friend of mine on my X account. He has listened to me on podcasts throughout since it's time to fight with Matthew Terry, also from the UK. And he and I are now interacting on the phone some. He messages me. He'll leave comments on y'all's show about my interview presentations and what he thinks. I'm not going to say what he does, but he's college educated, has a few degrees, and I'm very privileged to be friends with him today. He's really helped me out on how to give a better presentation. This is what he thinks will look good, yada yada. And he himself had gone to Bruno Sammartino's school and was being trained by Bruno Sammartino, but his parents and Bruno stopped him from going and told him to go back to college. And that had stuck with my buddy all these years that he didn't get to quite finish school. And I didn't want to be that way. I saw myself resenting it. Rather than these pictures up behind me on the wall, a chunk of them, I'd rather it be me and Mrs. and a couple of kids back there. But so far, that's not happened. So, what do? You continue to go forward with your dream and what you're after. And what I'm after is to be known on a world stage as being a color commentator and co-host, and somebody who calls it like it is. I'm as straight shooting as I am because I've hung out with legends. Ricky Steamboat, Ivan, Wahoo, they were all that way. They said exactly what they felt, and it rubbed off. I mean, people say my mom had it that way. She did, but the Ben sealed the deal. And then when my dad came back on scene, my dad's ended up being that way too. I mean, Dad's great. He doesn't have that little stop block that most of us have. He'll just bloop. There it is.
No filter.
Deal with it. It's been said that.
All right, Sonny.
Yes, sir.
One of our favorite things to do here on Wrestling Pedigree is fantasy booking. So let's fantasy book Sonny, the Man Eagle Cain. Who is your dream match?
For what generation?
Any generation.
And then shape Ric Flair.
Wow.
Yeah. Somebody that could go 45 minutes. Yeah.
Wow. That'll be a banger.
He's just been so misrepresented as he's gotten older. Like I said on the prior show, doesn't matter if he remembers me or not. I clearly remember him, and Mom did until she died. And matter of fact, I have a picture not handy right now. I'll show this on a later show of Mom, Flair, and I. And I said, Mom, do you want that on your grave? She had no picture placed on her gravestone. She said no. I said, why? She said some fan might take it.
That was,
And she cried when she said it. She said she didn't want to be bothered by a fan. And I said, okay. I said, well, what if I get no? She said, well, that's a little different. she said that would be helped. Couldn't be helped. So I said, I'm staying with this. She said she knew that. But there's so many different ways to make it in the industry now. There's going to the different alliances. There's podcasting. There's helping someone. I'm a little confused. So a friend of mine I've been helping the past couple years. He's real busy right now. I'm hoping that's the case. It is. But if it's something more, then I'm going to keep my hands on the plow and keep doing this color commentating on podcasting that I seem to have a niche for and see where it may go. I did rock film for a wrestler a few years back in 2020 at the Triad Theater. That was a musical about Ivan Koloff. Y'all may have heard about that. I co-wrote it. And the guy put a gay scene in it that was scared that Ivan was, and I told him not to do that. Well, guess who got the heat for that, fellas? I did. And it was from his wife of all people. I said all I could do was tell him not to do that. That's what I did. She cut me off to the family account on X. She wouldn't talk to me after that. And but she did manage to say, could I help her out with some of his medical bills? Well, I wasn't invited to the man's funeral. I'd called the house in time enough to have been a part of it. And then she's asking me to help her pay some medical bills, and then she decides to cut me off. So no, I'm not interested in that. I knew Ivan's first wife. And there was always a little resentment in the immediate family, including with Nikita, that I called Ivan Uncle. Well, 2/3 of the guys in training camp called Ivan Uncle, and it wasn't a big deal. So to me, it was a term of endearment and respect to somebody who had sort of bumped me along for 20 years at that time, and it didn't bother Ivan. Ivan and I talked about it down here at the park. I got him a deal here at Westbrook Park in Mount Olive. A couple years before he died in 2016. I got pictures of that too. I'll share them on another show. And we sat down at an autograph table. And again, people just didn't realize how long I'd stayed at this. If you love something you do, it's not work. And what I love about these shows, guys, is I can watch the 5 shows during the week that I tried diligently to watch, and we'll cover it all on the 3 or 4 shows that I'm doing. And I think that's super because it crosses over. There's no surprise at the end of it.
Just actually, a quick question came into my head. I just want to ask it before we end the show.
Absolutely.
In a few words, Sonny, what would you describe your wrestling career, your in-ring career? How would you describe it to a wrestling fan learning about the business?
About what it's like?
Yes, but as your career. So, in a few words, what would you say about your career?
Well, I took what Ivan told me to do. Ivan said be a whore of the business. I said, what do you mean? He said, win to anyone and lose, but most importantly, lose to anyone. And I didn't understand that in the very beginning until after I got going a couple of years. And when I met back up with Ivan in the Mid-Atlantic, have a picture of that too. I'll share on another show at the end. But he said he understood I was a whore in the business. I said, "Well, sir, you taught me."
That saying you said, I didn't understand that when I was growing up, but then watching a Mick Foley documentary and his book, and he was saying like he was a whore, he would go to the highest bidder. You had to back then,
Yes, sir.
and
Absolutely.
as me and Steve are fans who we read and we watch documentaries and podcasts like this. We understand now that you have to if you want to get ahead.
Yes,
If you
sir.
want to get over, you have to make the other person look like $1,000,000.
You have to, and that is so hard to do because people don't listen when you're trying to help them. They won't be this, that, and the other. They won't have belt losses that don't make any sense. That happened between uh, Pretty Boy Tracy Gilbert and I a couple of times. He wanted the belt back at a show where it made no sense to drop it to him. Then I told him it didn't. I said, give me a decent show. I'll drop it to you happily, and I would have, but he never did. Uh, there was going to be a show at Bethesda Day Gym in Durham, North Carolina. I would have happily dropped it to him there. They canceled it ahead of time. So, I mean, it's doable still, but you got to have the heart. You can't go in there and say, I'm going to make it in 2, 3 years. You just can't. The main event mamas were stunned when they learned that I had been on independence for 12 and a half years. I mean, they leaned
Shout
forward.
out to the mamas.
Sir,
Shout out to the mamas because they are amazing.
I will. They leaned forward in their chair when I gave my commentary, which I hope to do here on the show too for you guys. And I shared a picture of Ricky Morton and I together, and I said, I know Kerry Morton's dad, and they just leaned forward and looked. And one of the things a lady I know here in town asked me just last week, she said, did I really know all those people? I said, I'm not making it up. I said, Mama and I got out. We didn't stay in Mount Honor. We splurged.
Hmm.
And people are just people. What I like in a person is their ambition and their attitude and their zest to do what they love to do. Like, I hope it shows through how much I love being a part of the game still. And you have to have that because who's to say I couldn't end up a WWE event color commentating because through working these shows now. You can't say that in this day and time because the WWE are looking for guys like me still running, trying to make something happen. So
Yeah.
it's in my favor again after all these years. How about that?
You know, you said you were surrounding yourself with legends such as Steamboat. Um, I feel the last 2 weeks, me and Steve have absolutely hanged out with a massive legend. That is you,
Thank you.
Sonny. I really, really enjoy the stories. I love your passion for the business. I love that you're so open and so honest. And I cannot wait to have you back on Wrestling Pedigree.
Cool.
We talked for the current wrestling and beyond. Um, Yeah, I know Steve is Steve loves those kind of wrestling stories, don't you, Steve?
And I'm going to put a book together, a book arrangement together at some point. I haven't decided when I'm going to do it or whatnot. A buddy of mine here in town said have it in 2 books, and I may, but hopefully I'll get to talk about some things in there too that'll be entertaining and honest to people. Good. Because the people make you people that went to my shows years ago made me on the independence, and they're making me now because now I get to tell them, watch me on Wrestling Pedigree, watch me on Wrestling Spotlight, boogity boogity boo, and they're tuning in. So that I mentioned 3 people the past week that have come to me and said, guess what, we're tuning in. Well, a couple of these were the same people that didn't think I'd ever do anything in it, and people change their mind as time goes on sometimes. So not everything's so transparent, black and white, that you can write everybody off and say, the heck with it. But the song that sticks with me the most is "Are You Sure? Are You Sure Hank did it this way?" It's been a bumpy time. I've been in some tights in my life where people discovered while I was there who I was, and it made a difference there, and it seems to be making a difference here in town. And I'm trying to bring everybody along with me this trip, and nobody left behind that doesn't want to be. But you don't forget ugliness. It takes 1,000 good things to erase one ugliness.
Absolutely.
It sure does.
Steve, your final words.
Sonny, it's been such a pleasure having you on the past 2 weeks. I am so excited to have you as a regular.
Cool.
Um,
Happy to be here.
Hearing your stories just makes me so happy. And when you do publish that book, I will be the first one to purchase it.
Well, appreciate that.
And
So-
as someone has got 2 books out at the moment, plug. Yeah, I definitely would love to read that. Sunny, I really want you to be on Wrestling Pedigree as a regular, so I am issuing an invite to you for the 10th of January, where we will be discussing the fallout of Bash in Berlin.
Okay.
And then we'll discuss whatever happened that week. And I want to do a spotlight thing where you pick the wrestler. You pick the wrestler that you want to talk about, and we will just discuss that wrestler at length.
Okay.
But I'm really looking forward to the partnership we will have with you. And I know that your legendary status will make us legendaries.
Well, something y'all could do is what we do on Wrestling Spotlight too. Y'all can get a belt together. Y'all can have a metal belt, and y'all can have a smaller leather belt. You could do a champion of the week, and you can present the belts to various people who Matt decides is the champion that week, and that's advertisement.
I would do that, but unfortunately, someone keeps winning.
Okay.
So, somebody's got an eagle belt.
Cool.
But yeah, we'll definitely come up with some ideas. Especially in 2026, it's gonna be a massive year for Wrestling Pedigree, and to have you on board will make it even more better.
Would love to have something from England on my mantle. Really would.
I was going to say something really bad then, but I was not going to mention the American Revolution. So
I've got something. I have a press buddy of mine here in Wayne County, and he's kept up with me for 2 years now. And he said as things continue to keep him in check and let him know what's going on in my wrestling stuff. So we don't have anybody here that's done the wrestling like I have, but I'm the first one from Mount Olive to have kept on with it. Now we had a youngster come up after me that had some talent and whatnot, but even a couple of the town cops have admitted no one ran like I did. I mean, I was out there every weekend. I worked a job and a half, full time and part, and then I'd go wrestle on the weekend. I never had a day off. But the pop was so good in the ring out there doing it at the time. It made it seem worthwhile to do that. So.
Before we end this amazing two-part, Sonny, where can people find you, sir?
People can find me at Sonny Cain, Sonny the Man Eagle Cain on Instagram. Had a little activity pick up there lately. They can find me at Sonny Cain at the Man Eagle 1995. I have been the Man Eagle since 1995. I've been in the wrestling business since 1992. Not count the years I was an initial fan. Counting the years I was an initial fan, I've been a part of the industry for 50 years already. And they can find me at Sonny Cain at the Man Eagle on Facebook. And what I bring through all this is to chase your dream, not people. So
it's amazing to have you. Thank you so much, Sonny. Steve, where can people find you?
You can find me on Facebook. You can find me in MWL, where I am no longer actively ruining MWL for now. You can find me on Twitter under pedigree_Steve. I'm sorry, not Twitter. X. I remembered. I didn't even have to think about it this time.
You need to send me a friend request.
Absolutely.
On X, and you too, Matt.
That's there.
And other than that, you can just find me around.
Oh, yes. You can find... Thank you so much, Steve, for joining me once again. Love you having on as my co-host. You can find Wrestling Pedigree on Facebook. Has Wrestling Pedigree. You can find us on Instagram and YouTube. Wrestling Pedigree 92. You can find us on TikTok, where we're blowing up on there, as we had one video that has had 81,000 views.
Wow.
Which is just incredible, and it's gained a lot of following, so we are building up on that. And you can find us every weekend. There's that black belt coming through. We can find us every weekend. We're here. We have our awards ceremony, like awards, end of year awards next week on the 27th. We have the Ross Report returning on New Year's Day. But we do have some special guests.
Am I a part of the 27th show or just?
If I was going to say we'll have some special guests. So, Sonny, if you want to come down to discuss the awards and whoever is voted the best wrestler of the year, men and women and stuff like that, you're more than welcome to join.
We'll try and make it.
But I'll be on the 27th of December, probably about 7 p.m. Eastern. And after this show, there will be a promotional plug for that, as it is Christmas time, and I thought I'll do something fun. And as I showed this to Steve earlier, he loved it. And I hope, Sonny, you'll love it and all.
Yeah.
So from myself, Sonny, and Steve, happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and we'll see you again next week. And if not, then it'll be the 10th of January with Sonny. So happy holidays, everyone, and enjoy wrestling.
Last Christmas I gave you a pop, but the very next night you kicked out on top. This this year to save me from tears. I'll book it with wrestling pedigree. Cheers. Once bitten and twice pinned. I keep my guard up, but you still win. Tell me, baby, do you recognize me? Well, it's been a year. It doesn't surprise me. Merry Christmas. I wrapped up the bells and sent it with a note saying this year's main event hits. Now I know what a fool I've been, but if you kiss me now, I know you still spin. Last Christmas I gave you a pop, but the very next night you kicked out on top. This year, to save me from tears, I'll book it with a wrestling pedigree. Cheers. Crowded arena, friends with tired eyes. I'm hiding from you and your suplex surprise. My God, I thought you were someone to rely on. Me, I guess I was just a jobber to cry on. Last Christmas I gave you a pop, but the very next night you kicked out on top. This year, to save me from tears, I'll book it with the wrestling pedigree. Cheers. Last Christmas I gave you a pop, but the very next night you kicked out on top. This year,